Hi everyone, and welcome to this Finance with Excel video. In this video, we are going to build a workbook that helps you estimate what the value of your 401k is going to be when you retire for a variety of different assumptions. So to start out, we're going to start with these inputs. And remember, the gray are things that we input into the document, and they're just the assumptions that go into this model. So if you need to, pause the Excel file right now and put all of this in, because we need to know in order to calculate your and this is designed for someone who's just coming out of college. And so let's say you're graduating at about 23 years old, and you're going to start contributing to your 401k at 23, and you plan to work until you're 70. So you've got a 47-year work week, and that's just for years to retirement. It's just age at retirement minus age. But notice these are all gray, so you can adjust these however you want to. Now, this current income is going to be what you expect your income to be once you graduate, and then this income growth is going to be, because you're going to we need to know your income, because you're going to contribute some fraction of your income to your 401k, your company's 401k plan for you, and then we also need to know, because incomes tend to go up over time. Now, I'm aware that incomes don't generally go up by 4% per year. You typically get a raise. Incomes tend to be more lumpy, meaning incomes will go up by a couple of percent every year, and then you'll get a promotion and you get like a 20% or 30% boost in your income. And but I'm just going to say, if we level it out, we'll just say, I'm just going to put in a 4%. You can put in whatever you want. I think 4% is reasonable. And then what you kind of think your maximum income is for your given field. And so you can pick whatever number you think this is, and then that'll kind of help you figure out what your maximum income is. So next is this 401k contribution. We need to know what percent of your income are you going to contribute to your 401k. So I'm just putting 5% here. Now, most employers will have some sort of matching program for the 401k to try and encourage their employees to contribute to their 401k. Now, what they will generally do is you need to know two numbers. You need to know what percent of their income they will match, and what percent of dollar per dollar, what percent they will match for you. So, for example, if your employer will match 5% of your income, dollar per dollar, so 100% per dollar, then what they will do is, if I contribute 5% of my income, then my employer will also take that 5% of my income and then multiply it by 100%, and then they will also contribute that same amount. Now, if I increase to 6%, they will only match up to 5%. And so perhaps others might have something that maybe like 5%, and then they will match 30%. So let's say 5% of my income is $1,000. I put $1,000 in. They will match up to 5%, so they will match up to $1,000, but they will only match 30 cents on the dollar. So they would put in $300 into my 401k. Now, this matching is super helpful, and you just need to make sure that you talk to your HR people wherever you end up getting a job, and they will help you figure out exactly how your matching program works. Now, your 401k max contribution, this is just a federally regulated number. Right now it's about $18,000. Last thing we need to know is, how much interest are you going to earn on your 401k? I'm just going to kind of put real stock returns, and this is why, because in this document we are going to be inflation adjusting everything. And so even though on average stock returns tend to be around 6 to 7% or 7-ish% per year, and bond returns tend to be around 4 or 5% per year. We're backing inflation out, which tends to be about 2%. We did another document where we backed inflation out for stocks, and I did a separate video where we estimate the real stock return over various time periods. So we need to know how much interest we're going to end up earning on our various portfolios. Okay. So now that we have all this information put in, we need to start building our workbook that tells us exactly how much money our 401k is going to be worth when we're done. So the first thing that we need to do is in this age. So we're going to this is the age where you start contributing. And so that's just going to be 23. Now, we just need this to go up by 1 year every time. So what we're going to do is we're going to do an if statement. We're going to say if if 1 plus whatever the age in the prior year is less than the age at retirement, and make sure you anchor that, then the age is going to be the prior year plus 1. If not, then just give me a blank. Now, I'm going to drag this down to just however far I want to. But notice it gives me, once I get to my age, I need a less than or equal to in here. I apologize. Once I get down to my retirement age at 70, it errors out after that. So then we just need to do we need to wrap this statement in an if error statement. And then we're just going to say, if this expression returns an error, give me a blank. So now if we pull that down, then when we see once we get to 70, it stops. And so this will keep calculating until we are 70. So the next thing that we need to know is your income. So what is your income in this year? So we're assuming if this person is, I'm just going to actually change this to 30. So suppose that you, I don't recommend this. I think you should start contributing to your 401k as soon as you start earning money. But suppose you waited until you were 30 years old. Well, you expect your income, if this your starting income is $30,000 a year, what do you expect your income to be when you're 30? So that's 7 years later. Well, your income is going to be $30,000 multiplied by 1 plus the income growth rate raised to the distance, the difference between age and your current age that you expect to have. So if your income went up in real terms by 4% per year, so that's after inflation terms, went up by 4% per year, then after 7 years you would end up having an income of $39,000 of that much. However, we need to make sure that your income doesn't go higher than this maximum income. So what we need to do, because at some point incomes tend to taper off and you tend to stay relatively constant at a particular income after some point in time. So what we need to do is we're going to do the min of whatever this value is and the maximum income. That will just make sure that our income doesn't end up getting too big. So now if we, I apparently forgot to anchor on something. So where I forgot to anchor is I forgot to anchor this D1. So if I anchor that D1 and then I drag it down, we can see that my income will go up until I hit my maximum expected income, and then it stays flat until I retire. But notice we also end up getting these values, after these errors after 70, so we just need to wrap that in an if error statement. Okay. Okay, perfect. So now what is my contribution? Well, my contribution is simply going to be the minimum of either the max contribution that I'm allowed to have, make sure you anchor on that, and your 401k contribution, multiplied by your income. And so we hit that. So if I were contributing 5% of my income, and I think 5% generally is a good kind of baseline to have, and then I just send this value down, then we can see that over time my contributions are going to increase. Once again, we end up getting these values down here, so we need to do an if error statement that just gets rid of those values at the end. So the next thing we need is we need to calculate what our employer contribution is going to be. Now, in this particular case, our employer will match dollar for dollar up to 5% of our income. So now, to calculate this, we need to calculate our employer contribution. So what it's going to be is, if we're going to use the if statement, because there are two cases that could case. If we are contributing less than their match, then it's just going to be whatever we contribute multiplied by this employer. So if our contribution is less than or equal to their matching level, then their contribution is simply going to be whatever we contribute multiplied by the employer match. matching percent. If not, then it's simply going to be, they're going to do 5%. So the only other case would be is if it's greater. If our matching is greater, then it's going to be 5% multiplied by my contribution, or multiplied by my income, and there we go. And that's all we need to do. So we hit that, and then we can see that it's, in this particular case, they are going to contribute dollar for dollar. Now, if this dropped to like a 30% thing, then they would contribute 30% of what we're planning to do. So if we move that back up to 100%, and let's say we move this up to like 9% of our income, we can see our contributions go up, but our employer's contribution is going to stay at the same because they're only going to match up to 5% of our income. So now we just drag that down, and we can see that they will match all the way up, but we have these values again, and so we need to wrap this in an if-error statement to get rid of those value functions at the, or those errors at the end. So if we wrap that in if-error statement, then there we go. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do this stock percent thing here. So we need to know what percent of our portfolio is going to be invested in stocks versus invested in bonds. Now, generally, most people recommend, most financial advisors would recommend that earlier in your career, when you're less, when your retirement income is less, or when retirement is less inevitable, having more in stocks is probably better, because stocks on average tend to have higher returns, and stocks on average tend to have higher returns, but they also have higher variability. For example, if your entire retirement portfolio was invested in stocks in 2008, then you might have had to put off retirement because your because the stock market crashed in 2008, and you might have had to do that. But if you were invested in bonds in 2008, then you would have been immune to the changes in the stock market. And actually, you would have also gotten an additional bump, because as interest rates go down, bond values tend to go up. And so, so having bonds. So as you get later in your career, you can do stocks or bonds. So what I'm going to show here is basically, I'm just going to do linearly. So in your first year, you're going to do 100% in stocks and 0% in bonds, and then we're just going to transfer that over into bonds a tiny bit more every single year, until by the time that you're retired, you're 100% into bonds. Now, this is not necessarily the way you have to do it. You could play with this and make it as complicated as you want. How you calculate what percent in stocks and bonds, you could manually enter it. I'm just gonna do that. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to create the amount in stocks. Is initially I want 100% to be in bonds or stocks, and I want that to gradually slide over. So we need to basically know what fraction of the way between 30 and 70 are we. To calculate that, we're just going to do retirement age minus your current age divided by your retirement age, and then anchor on that, minus your age starting to contribute. And we can see that right now it's 100%. But if we bring this down, we can see that over time it goes down until 0% of our return is in stocks. Now, once again, we have these errors after we get to past retirement, so we're going to use our if error statement to get rid of those errors at the end, and then just send that down. And then we can see it stops right there. So now we can know, now we can do an estimated return. So the return on our portfolio, this is where we get this real stock return value right here, is going to equal 100%. So it's going to equal whatever percent we are into stocks multiplied by our real stock return plus 1 minus whatever we are in stocks, because that's just what we are in bonds, multiplied by our real bond return. And make sure you anchor on those two. So this is kind of a way to think of, our expected returns. Now, granted, there's a ton of assumptions that go into this, and once again, there are these errors that we need to take care of with an if error statement. And we can drag that down. So now we can calculate the amount of interest that we're going to end up earning. So in the first period, the amount of interest that we end up earning is 5% multiplied by the amount that's in our 401k, which is going to be your contribution plus your employer's contribution. And then your 401k value is going to end up equaling the interest that you earned plus your employer's contribution plus your contribution. So at the end of this first year, your 401k will have about $6,000 in it. Now, in the next period, your interest, the interest that you're going to end up earning, is going to equal the interest rate that you expect to earn times the amount that's in your 401k, which is the amount that was in there at the end of last year, plus the amount that you contribute, plus the amount that your employer contributes. And so that's how much interest you're going to earn. And so your 401k is going to end up equaling your interest plus your 401k value. So now these two we can just send down. And now we come down here and we come and see once again we have these errors that occur after this. We can use an if error statement to get rid of those, and then we're going to send that down. And notice I do these on the second row instead of the first one, and that's because the formula here is slightly different, or sorry, the formula here is slightly different than the formula here. And so I can't just drag this formula down, I have to drag this formula down. And the formula here is, well, the formula there is actually the same, or well, and the formula here is slightly different. So now what I'm going to do is if error and get rid of that. Okay, so now if I send this down, we can see that it stops. It stops right here. But you'll also notice that there's actually an error in the way I calculate this, because the value of your 401k is your previous value plus your interest plus your contributions plus your employer's contributions. I forgot to add those in. So now if we drag that formula down, we can, and then make this bigger, we can see that at the end of, by the time you retire, we will have $694,000 in our account, in our 401k, if this was the way we did it. So now we're going to do a couple of things. I added a couple of lines, and then I'm going to remove that, no fill, and then I'm gonna put 401k value at retirement, and then also I want your contributions, your employer contributions and interest that you ended up earning. Okay, so your value of your retirement, we're just going to use a max function, and we're going to say it's because we're not withdrawing any money and we're not earning negative returns, so our 401k value is just going to be the maximum of whatever is in here, which will end up pulling up whatever's in the last column. This makes it dynamic, so if let's say I change to 65 is when I'm planning to retire, then it'll give me the value at 65. And okay, so your contributions is just going to end up being the sum of this column with your contributions in it. And then the employer contributions is equal to the sum of your employer contributions. And the interest, you can either do the sum of the interest, or you just know the remaining portion is equal to the interest. So it's the total minus your contributions minus your employer contributions. So you can see that for this portfolio, or for this person's 401k, you can see that they if this was the way that the world worked out, they would end up having just shy of $700,000 in today's money in their 401k when they retired. Now, I want to illustrate one thing. So if we start at 23, or we start at 30, or we start at 40, how big of a difference does it make on our 401k given these same parameters? So I'm actually going to move that back to 5%, because you're probably not going to contribute 10% of your income, but 5% is probably reasonable. So you'll have just under $500,000 in your 401k at the end, when you end up retiring. And that's if you start at 30. So I'm going to copy these, and I'm going to do a paste values, and so that just puts those numbers, just the values and not any of the formulas. So we can see this is what your 401k, how it breaks down if you start contributing at 30. If you start contributing at 40, this is what it'll look like. And if you start contributing at, let's make that dollars. So now if you start contributing at 23, so basically immediately when you graduate, this is what it will end up looking like. So now here's one interesting thing to look about it. So your contributions, so what's the difference? How big of a difference does it make in your portfolio, in your 401k, if you start at 23 versus you start at 30? So in contributions, the difference is going to end up being 130 and, oops, that's the wrong way. So it should be 142 minus 130. So you will end up not spending $11,000 because you'll end up keeping that money and not contributing it to your 401k. So, but what's the difference in 401k? So the difference in your 401k value, because of, is going to end up being this minus this. So it's an $88,000 difference. So if we subtract these two, you end up, by weighting, cost of not contributing. So by waiting until you're 30 years old to start contributing to your 401k, you cost yourself $76,000 in retirement funds. And the reason why that is because although you're only contributing $11,000 over that time period, your employer is also contributing over that same time period, and you're earning interest over that same time period. And so even though you save yourself $12,000 in contributions, you're costing yourself $88,000 in 401k, or in the value of your 401k at the end, which means the cost of not contributing to your 401k is equal to $77,000. So I hope this thing is useful to you. Now, I mean, you can look at this, and with this calculator right here, you can change any of these numbers that you want. So suppose that you hope you get more money and your ceiling is a little bit higher, and the same thing, then you can see that your 401k, how your 401k is going to break down over that same time period. So hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching.